Hello, this is Heather Hoffman, and I'm here today with another layered pattern paper card using the April 2021 Kit of the Month. I'm also showing you some simple coloring. I actually have it zoomed in here on my image that I already have on some white Copic-friendly cardstock, already die cut down into a circle, and I'm just going to kind of keep it zoomed in here so you can see my coloring. When I first looked at this image, I actually initially thought it looked kind of just like succulent. So I was going to color it in green. But when I got ready to start, I decided it looked like it needed a little pop of that pink in there as well. And partly that's to make it coordinate with my pattern paper that you'll see that I pull out in a little bit. So some simple little creative coloring here, and it pretty easily turns it into some little flower clusters with leaves. I'm just using 2 shades of pink Copic markers and 2 shades of green. I started off with R20 and then R32 for the floral parts, and then for the leaves I used G21 and YG63 just to add a little bit of depth and shading to them, nothing fancy. Then I'm using some warm gray markers to color in the can. The great thing is you'll notice on there kind of the detail already added with just the drawing and the sketchy style to it. Those are perfect for planning where to add your shadows. It kind of takes some of the thinking and the work out of it. So I'm just kind of roughly shading in where there's a little more shading kind of drawn in on the design. So I started off there with my W5, and then I'm moving down to W3 and just going off those same lines and just kind of coloring roughly around there just to add that texture and the shading between. And then once I finish with that second gradient there of the gray, I'm going to finish off at the very end and come in there with my W1, which is the lightest. So I basically went darkest to lightest on that can there. And like I said, this is just really foolproof, easy shading that doesn't take much thought or effort. You don't have to try and figure out where the light comes from. Just follow what's already on the design there by the Unity artist, which is super helpful. And I love how that came out. All right, now that we've got our coloring done, I'm going to zoom back out so you can see everything. I have my base pattern paper layer there. I've already adhered it to a top folding card base, and my sentiment is already trimmed down to a strip. And I'm using just paper scraps from the same paper pad, again, Cartabella 6x6 Flower Garden. I like using, when I'm layering pattern paper, I often just choose from the same paper pad because you know they're going to coordinate and be in the same color scheme. I trim them all just to varying widths of just strips of paper. I thought about trimming them into banner ends, but they kind of feel like banners even without the little diagonal cuts in the bottom. So I just left them as is, and I kind of layered them on there a way that I liked. And then I'm going to add a bow to the top of that circle. This is a trick I've showed a few other times in other videos, but I thought it bears repeating anyway. I'm going to punch a hole, just a teensy tiny hole. You could use a paper piercer or something like that. It doesn't have to, it can be a bigger hole if you want. I just prefer a tiny hole for doing this. And then I threaded through just a loop of that string there. This is Mayart's natural jute twine. And then I'm going to wrap it as wide as I want my bow to be. I wrapped it 3 times around my fingers, slide it into the center of that loop, and then pull it tight from the back. And just like that, it's a perfectly placed pinprick, easy bow. And then go over to the back, tie that in a knot. And at that point, realistically, it probably won't pop through with the knot, but just to be safe, I always tape it in place from the back, just so I'm guaranteed that it's on there sturdy and stable. And then you can go to the front, kind of loosen up the ends of that bow, and you get a nice, full, fun-looking bow. I love this trick for adding just kind of foolproof, easy bows at the top of die-cut panels like that. All right, now before I adhere all this pattern paper down, notice I kind of curled up the edges a little just to add a bit of texture. I'm also not putting my adhesive all the way out at the very edges. I'm just kind of putting it in the center because that's going to hold it plenty stable and sturdy enough, but it's going to allow those edges to curl up and leave that little bit of texture. And without having to add a ton of foam adhesive between the layers, it just makes it feel like it has more movement and more dimension. All right, I left them long, so I trimmed them across the top just using a pair of wide scissors. And then this is where the foam adhesive does come out. I'm going to pop a little foam adhesive on the back of that circle just to add a good stable little bit of dimension on that layer. Pull off all those pieces and then carefully adhere it in place, making sure to get it level because once that's down, you're not going to want to remove and change that. And then my sentiment that I've already got on a strip of paper there, I'm just going to trim it down and do my quick little banner edges. I did keep the banner edges on the sentiment. Like I said, I might not have done it on the pattern paper, but I do like doing that on a sentiment. And then to adhere that down, again, where I had to kind of choose where I wanted to put it, but then I'm going to curl up the edges on this just like I did on the other. And then again, only put my adhesive there in the very center. I'm using score tape so it's nice and sturdy since I'm not putting it all the way across. And then I can keep those edges curled up. And again, it's going to add just that little bit of dimension and texture. All right, there we go. Simple coloring, fun layered pattern paper, and this card is done. Thanks for coming by today. Have a wonderful day.